If any of you wishes to propose to a woman, then if he can look at her with regard to that which will induce him to marry her, then let him do so. Shaykh al-Fawzan mentions, so this proves that it is permissible to look at what normally appears of the body of one's intended. That you're allowed to look at her, what normally appears from her body. And this is done without her knowledge and without trying to be in seclusion with her. So that's important. That you're allowed to look at her in her garments, meaning with her jilbab, not upon her body. You're allowed to look at her. But you're allowed to look at her, that which is normally apparent from her. So that which she would wear, for example, as some of the scholars mention, what a righteous woman would wear in front of her father. Okay? So what a woman would wear in front of her father normally, then a man who wishes to propose to a woman can see her in that manner, in that form. So that's permissible. And what is better is that you do so without her knowledge. Because that is what the Prophet Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned. And it is impermissible, haram. And it is from the greatest of ills, my brothers and sisters, that you ever seclude yourself with a woman. Do not seclude yourself with a woman. As the Prophet ﷺ said, that if a man is in seclusion with a woman, then the third is who? Shaitan. And what's the shaitan going to do? He carries a message from this one to that one. He says to her, look at him in the eyes. He says to him, look at him in such and such a manner. He says to her, move closer. He informs her, move closer to him. Seclusion with a woman is extremely dangerous, my brothers and sisters. And it reminds me of a situation that occurred on an occasion with a sister. May Allah forgive us and forgive her. Now this situation occurred that she intended to give da'wah to an individual. Right? She intended to give da'wah to an individual in her educational facility. She was in the same educational facility as that individual. And her intention was to give him da'wah. So initially, she was in the same lecture theatre with him. And this ikhtilat, and this free mixing in the lecture theatres, this is something that the scholars, they forbid. Shaykh Abdul Aziz ibn Baz, Shaykh Muhammad bin Salih al-Uthaymin, Shaykh Salih al-Fawzan, Lajnatul Da'ima, past and present. That free mixing in the universities and in the educational facilities is something that is forbidden. Nevertheless, this sister was there. And she started sitting close, not next to each other, but in the same vicinity as a non-Muslim, as a kafir, male. And he started, he asked her, she was wearing the hijab and so on. So he asked her some questions about the hijab. So she responded. She responded positively to her da'wah. So then, she would see him in the lecture theatre and she would give him da'wah, talk about Islam, talk about Allah, talk about the Messenger, talk about the falsehood of his religion and so on. And the next thing that happened is that they would meet in the canteen, in the cafeteria of that educational establishment. So they would share a coffee and they would sit across from the table. Then that moved to outside of the university. Kafir, man. Muslim woman hijab. No niqab, but hijab. And that moved to outside of the university, in a restaurant. So now they're having a meal together. And then eventually, it led to him inviting her to his apartment to talk about Islam, apparently. And her experience with Islam, and how she grew up as a Muslim. Nothing happened to begin with. But eventually, that which shaitan wanted, and that which shaitan desired for them, and that was that they sin, and that they cause, and that they enter into this transgression against themselves, and transgressing the deen of Allah, that they slept with each other. And he impregnated her, she became pregnant. Now this is a woman, Muslim woman. Now, she phones, asking for help. What shall I do? Now, I want to have an abortion. Okay, now, the child, she's been sleeping with this man, Allahu A'lam, 6 months, 7 months, something like this. And now, she wants to have an abortion. She didn't recognize when she was pregnant, and now the pregnancy is in mid-term. Now she wants to have an abortion. So I said, haram. Shaykh Falah, I asked him the question, Sheikh Falah was with me. Sheikh Falah said, don't follow up one sin with another sin. Don't follow up the sin of fornication with the sin of murder. So then, Sheikh Falah advised, so I passed on the advice, go to your parents and inform them. Make tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And tell them. Went to the mother, mother said, have an abortion. Don't tell your father, have an abortion. This is the reality of what occurs. Then she said, I'm going to have an abortion. I can't live with this, the shame and humiliation. But as we say, that if you're going to commit a crime of pleasure, that you're going to commit this crime and you enjoyed it and you took pleasure in it, then when the hardship comes, then you better be ready to face the hardship that comes with it also. You can't expect to have all of this fun and then say, okay, I made a mistake, so now khalas, it's all over, I'm going to kill the baby. No, you have to now take the consequences of your actions. Imagine someone's sister, someone's daughter, and she comes home pregnant. What is that? It is humiliation, of course. It's embarrassment, humiliation. But she committed that crime, and now she has to suffer the consequences of that crime. So this issue of seclusion is important, but we don't give it its true importance. Sometimes that seclusion begins by text messaging. This is how it begins sometimes, because the prevalence and the widespread nature of things, widespread nature of things such as mobile phones. Every child, youth, young, old, everyone's got a mobile phone. Number gets passed, brother texts a young boy, or a young man will text a young sister. And they start texting each other. Texting turns to phone calls. Phone calls turn to setting up a page on Facebook. Then they pass over images between each other. They communicate in chat forums. And they start talking to each other in the phone. And on the phone they talk in a manner that is extremely inappropriate. Something, wallahi, that no father would tolerate for his daughter. No mother for her son. That this type of behavior takes place. Then they meet each other. And then shaitan does what shaitan does. Which is to cause the son of Adam to sin. And to have this corrupted type of behavior. So no doubt, when we refer to looking at her, then this looking at her has its rulings and has its conditions. Shaykh al-Fawzan mentions the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. He said, look at her. When he informed one of the companions, he said, look at her, meaning before marriage. For indeed it is a good cause of there being love between the two of you, meaning inside of your marriage. The hadith reported by Imām al-Tirmidhi and Imām al-Nasai and others. And the fuqaha of al-Islam, they have stated, is it any woman that you can go to and have a look? And someone says to you, what are you looking at? He says, oh no, I might want to marry her. No, it's not any other woman. No, it's not any woman. The fuqaha of al-Islam, Shaykh al-Fawzan mentions, that they have stated, it is permissible for the one seeking engagement of a woman to look at what is normally and usually displayed of a woman without being in seclusion with her and whilst being in a state that is free from fitna. So long as it doesn't lead to any tribulation, and so long, and this is important, which many of the brothers, they love to quote the hadith, well, it's allowed for me to look because I might want to marry her. But this is the point that the ulama, with their understanding and the fiqh of the scholars, so long as he is fairly certain that she and her guardian will consent to the marriage. That is important. So the sister that you're looking at, you must have some knowledge beforehand, before you even look at her, that you have a very strong likelihood that this sister will marry you, if you were to ask. So now, what does that rule out? That rules out brothers following sisters near bus stops and on streets. That rules that out, my brothers. Finding out which house she lives in and peering through the window. She might be a married woman. Wallahu musta'an. Waliyadu billah. She might be a married woman. You're looking at someone's wife. She might be a woman who's already betrothed to somebody else. It's possible. So the woman must be known that she's single. The woman, you must know that there's a strong likelihood that she And her wali, her guardian, will say yes to you. If you are fairly certain that this is the case, then you may, look at her without her knowing that you're looking. Not what some of the brothers do. That anything that walks by, I'm looking at, why are you looking at her, akhi? Fair Allah, taqillah. Well, I'm looking to get married. That could be someone's wife that you're looking at. That could be a woman that another brother, she's already agreed to marry, and therefore it's haram for you to propose to her. Never mind, look at her. Important that these fine details of the affair are made clear. That so false excuses for sin are not utilized by the